Hi, everyone. Welcome today to our next installment of the series Ask an Expert, where I sit down remotely with leaders and innovators, get to explore the practical application of their knowledge in a more modern business setting. I'm Nora Herting, founder and CEO of ImageThink, a visual facilitator, graphic recorder, and thinker. Just a reminder, these events are also your opportunity to ask our fabulous guests any questions that you have. So please type your thoughts, comments, and questions into the chat, and we'll address them. I'm really excited today to do our episode on Ask the Expert as Ask the Founder with Maureen Taylor. It was about a year ago that I had the lovely privilege of just having a virtual coffee with Maureen from San Francisco. Maureen is the founder of S&P Communications, a company that works with high-performing business leaders to help them communicate and connect. And I also want to let you know that she is a disciple of Aristotle, something that we're going to dive into later. And she has just an insatiable appetite for humans and the human operating system, which I'd love to hear a little bit more about. So Mo, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's such a pleasure to be here and nice to see you.
Yeah, it's great to see you too. So before we went live, we had such an interesting conversation about, well, really a lot of things. But one thing that was really on your mind, and I think it's been on a lot of people's minds for the last few weeks, is just what is going on in the world right now as things are starting to unfold into sort of the next phase of being, right? And I wanted to hear from you sort of what you think are great lessons that we should remember and take with us from this period of COVID.
And the story's not over yet. One of the most interesting things that I do think that we're going through right now is the uncertainty of the change to new normal, whatever new normal is going to be. Much like when we went from the old way we were, COVID hit, and then we had to transition to everyone staying at home and not being in the car and not going anywhere and food delivery and everything shut down and mask, right? I mean, so that we kind of went crazy, right? That uncertainty we went through to get here. Now, right now we think, okay, this is good. We are still now in another stage similar to that of uncertainty because we still don't know exactly what that's going to be. So that's why it's a little crunchy right now still, I think. Don't you?
Do you think that, see, for me, I almost feel, and I was talking about this with somebody from the ImageThink team who said, I'm almost feeling nostalgic for last spring where things were really scary, but it was also very black and white for us, at least here in New York. Like everything stopped, nobody was leaving their house. And now we're in this kind of very nebulous stage. Do you feel like we're just experiencing the same thing in reverse, or is this somehow different than us all sort of having, to kind of hunker down all at the same time and go through that really abrupt change that we all experienced?
Well, there is one thing that's always true about change. Like change sucks, right? I mean, to a certain extent. And that uncertainty is one of the most frustrating and weird components of change. Our revisionist history, to be nostalgic about what we went through at the beginning, is our revisionist history. Because if you really go back, we were freaked out, right? Because, I mean, uncertainty is uncertainty. So it doesn't really matter. We are in the same boat, whether it's looking forward and we don't know. I think there's something similar to it as far as the crunchy is, because we don't know. We still don't know. We're still kind of wobbly.
Yeah, I feel like there's people are in different phases right now, and I'm really curious for those of you who are joining us, where are you in your personal life or your work life? Do you feel like the unfolding of things right now feels better, faster, different, the same as kind of the change that we went through before. So, Maureen, you had, when we were chatting about this, some really interesting tips for people as we were thinking about how do we start to model what the next phase of our work life looks like. What does that mean for high performing teams? What does that mean for teams that have a premium on collaboration and innovation? And you told me a little bit about, you have this rule of three. So you want to share that with everybody?
Well, rule of three is only because I like the number three. And usually if you do things in threes, it's a good number to start from. The one thing that I will say about right now is collective intelligence, people being able to talk about what they're going through in your community, in the workplace, which is our audience, people being heard about what they think and feel about the adjustment before you make the policy. You must come back, don't come back. It is a hybrid, 3 days, these hours, those hours, whatever those things are. Before we say that, listen to people. And here's where the three comes in. Have 3 meetings with your constituency, asking them what they think the new world would look like. Surveys are great. Everyone's coming up with numbers, but let people talk to each other about it and then voice it up and out. And you'll find, I think, that people start to, first they want to stay the same, then they start to move. Even in our little company, we've had 3 meetings where we're talking about what is our definition of the new world. I kept my mouth shut and people talked, and they came, we, then picked a person, they come up and they present to the whole company what they think. And it's interesting because we're in a journey towards our own way of defining what it is. But people will be a lot more bought in rather than telling them what to do. So 3 good meetings where people get to talk about it. And it's not that a business is, socialism. We're not talking about that everyone gets to decide is a consensus. No, it's a benevolent dictatorship. You do have to have productivity. You do have to set something up. But being heard, having an opinion, and people sometimes come up with a better idea than you can, is a beautiful thing. And then buy-in for this new world will be so much better.
All right, so do it in threes. Let people talk. Let them feel like they're coming to the decisions. They're offering the ideas.
They're offering ideas.
They're offering ideas.
Decision, right? Yeah, and they're very intelligent in a collective way. And people are dehydrated for connection still, and it's different than having a Zoom cocktail party. I mean, people are actually doing something. Thought leadership comes from everywhere. So give these beautiful people that work for you voice in what they think it looks like. And there's progress. By the 3rd meeting, there's something that is tied to productivity in a beautiful way.
Yeah, I hear you on that. And really, people are landing in really different places. And we have a comment from Chris Coleman. Thanks, Chris. It's always great to have you. Just stressing the need for flexibility and adaptability from management, because the changes are coming so quickly. We're hearing different messages, from the CDC, from our state governments, from our local governments. There's like this confusion. I live in New York. It's like, oh, I guess technically we don't have to wear our masks outside, but that almost feels like a little weird right now. What's the normative behavior? We're kind of all sort of mapping that out again. And I was just in a session with a bunch of business leaders earlier today, and people are landing in different places. Like, for instance, one woman said her small marketing company, they've decided it's all virtual, and they've actually prohibited them from meeting. So people just want to meet socially, like you said, being dehydrated. So they're having like gatherings in secret because they're supposed to be like officially gathering, which is kind of interesting. And then someone from a major pharmaceutical company, it's the other way around, where the leadership is back in the office, but they're not bringing people with them. People aren't behind it. They feel like it's kind of this passive aggressive move. But it sounds like really what you're saying is really just open up the dialogue and do it 3 times, and then be willing to hear the ideas people have.
Well, it's amazing, especially if you are a founder. And so you act, and up and to the right, let's keep going. You have a warrior mentality. You're all set to, set the charge. The interesting thing, and most of the time you might be right, but not all the time. And right now in uncertainty, people talking to each other and being heard doesn't mean you make a decision, but being heard and legitimately having a conversation is very healthy, since actually we don't know. Nobody knows. And to set a policy now is crazy. I mean, we don't have to right now. It can work towards it with everybody being involved.
Yeah, that's true. So I'm curious also, those of you listening, where are you at right now? What have you seen either making the decisions yourself as leaders, or what your organization is doing? What are they doing right? What maybe hasn't landed so great? Or any other tips or ideas about ways people are starting to unfold and kind of unpack what I think of as. I love that dehydrated for social connection, because it makes me think of like astronaut food. Like, pour some water on that. In that though, you had mentioned something around, like, is it the necessity for us to connect the same for everybody across all roles and organizations? Or have you found or observed, I know that you work with a lot of engineers and leadership, that there's, maybe different teams have found different levels of comfort working virtually and in person? And are there certain types of work or connections that somehow just require something other than, meeting on the screen? Mm-hmm. What's your thought?
I mean, we can typecast, right? People who need to collaborate, truly collaborate, having a 3D version of collaboration is helpful to 1D, which is screen. So one advice we're giving to people who are I think engineers are like, they're artists, right? So they need the alone time for that, but also together to build this beautiful thing that's making the world a better place. The 3D version, being together, is important. How they do that as a team, they should decide. So if you, as a big company, decide that you're going to have 3 days, we would like people to be here. Don't say the days. Have the teams decide there's a certain amount of time you should be together. So do it. How would you form it? And it's freedom for high performance teams. So how would it work best for you as a collaborative team to be as productive as possible? It's not whether you're at home or at work. It's how can you, in the combination of the two, because if you have the #1 engineer in Casablanca right now and you're in California or New York, you are going to have a meeting that's collaborative, and that person in Casablanca, most of you, they're going to be on the wall. They are going to be like this, and that's okay. Whether they're in the office in Casablanca or at home in Casablanca, it's all right. But the team needs to get together. And then if you do have distributed, bring people together. Some people are saying 4 times a year. I mean, people are trying to come up with numbers. There's just a combination.
Like so much.
Pardon me?
I said maybe it's 3 times a year, since 3 seems to be the magic number.
That I like, yes. Yeah.
But as you're like determining that, every team is different. I'm wondering, what are the metrics, or indicators people are using? I mean, metrics sounds so cold, but I've heard people say, wow, we're actually really efficient. We've been doing great. We've been performing really well. Or you kind of hear these reports. I honestly feel like not enough time's passed for anybody to really quantify this. But our last guest that we spoke with, Dan Siebold, was like, efficiency is not the same as innovation. That those two things, you can be a very productive team, or you can be working through, your widgets very quickly or very seamlessly. But is that for all organizations, is that the right sort of metric to look at? Or is there different ways to sort of define what success looks like or how the team is performing? I thought that that was a really interesting idea. And I'm curious, for you and your team, how have you noticed the difference between those things, or how do you kind of assess, like, what is the metric that you're saying this is working fabulously, we're all happy, we don't need to change anything?
Well, I don't know if that day is ever going to come, but that's okay, because working towards it is a cool goal to have. The thing about productivity, now that I think he's right. He's right. And with this world, productivity is suspect because of redundancy, and how we communicate isn't as defined in an efficient way yet. Okay. And I think trying to define it right now, no matter how hard we work at it, we work our living at helping this, right? And it's hard because we don't know blah, blah, blah what the new normal is. The thing is, why are we doing something, and what are the metrics? What are the 3 things that you have to do? How many features do you have to have done by this week? How many people do you have to hire? How many people do you have to reorg? Whatever the things are that you define as productive, and that is management and the team coming together, deciding this is what productivity is, and then clearly stating that numerically, what are the numbers? It has nothing to do with innovation. It has nothing to do with collaboration, but that is the output. And the clarity, we call them the blue boxes. So every week we show our blue boxes, and it's just, are we up, are we down, or are we over? But there's something snappy about it that's keeping our attention on, you do need to make more money than you spend. You do need to have the features if you have venture people giving you money to be able to produce something, right? So you have to be able to have that in the clearest way possible. That seems to be helping people, even though it seems, oh, you're simplifying it. Well, numbers are numbers, and they're not that complicated. I mean, it's up or down. So having that, and how you kick off your meetings, where are you with that gauge, and why? People are not comfortable with it because it's calling it out. It's like being in school and knowing every week what your grade is. But that's okay, because you have to do your homework, you have to study, you have to stand up, you have to give your report. So it's quantifying some of the stuff that connects to productivity.
Yeah, that's interesting. How do you quantify the work that you're doing, and how do you assess collaboration, creativity, and innovation? I'm curious, again, for those of us that are out there listening, like, what, for your own work and your own teams, how are you measuring that? How do you measure that? I mean, in some ways, I think we're gonna have like a fantastic social experiment happening now, because we're gonna have some organizations, like you said, doing 3 days a week. Everybody has to be in the office 3 days a week. Other ones are going to continue to work virtually. Other ones are going to be mandated to go back, and something in between. And maybe time will start to tell us something about those different structures in a different way, because, as you said, there's something about collaboration, innovation, creativity that does really feel galvanized by that 3-dimensional interaction, at least in part. And and why is that? And what do we do to translate that to the virtual space? I mean, that's what we've been all working around and helping our clients do and solve for the last year. So it'll be interesting to kind of have like a control group in a way to see, as it unfolds, like, does it unfold differently, for instance? So that's kind of what's been on Maureen Taylor's mind lately as the founder, is just what is going on in the world? How is it unfolding? And why is there this sense of urgency right now for all of us to define what the next phase is going to look like, right? As so many things change. And as Chris Coleman said, leaders need to be flexible. Things are still changing a lot. We're not through it. It's evolving. I also really want to talk about something I mentioned in the intro, Maureen, which is your background. I think, one of the reasons I enjoy talking to you so much might be that we found ourselves as founders in business, but we both came to it with kind of unconventional backgrounds in education. So I had thought you had a philosophy degree, but you corrected me that it's classic rhetoric. Is that right?
That's right.
So first of all, tell us a little bit, like, what does one study when they study classic rhetoric? And then I'd love for you to share how you have become a raging disciple of Aristotle and what that, how you still use that today with clients, which is really fascinating.
I would love to tell you. Can I say one thing about quantum mechanics before I get into that?
Of course.
Okay. So quantum mechanics, because a lot of people are engineers that we work with, or scientists, or data people, and quantum mechanics is fabulous because, and so perfect for understanding right now, because quantum mechanics says simply that this does not exist, and this does not exist except for the interaction. The interaction is what makes something, when all those little things go like that, right? That's what makes it matter. So that is why right now, while we're going through this weird thing, interaction with the team and the conversation is even more important to having something solid, sane, positive, heliotropic in the new world. So that's when engineer goes, oh, that's why I should talk to people, right? Because there is something about it. Anyway.
I'm loving this. So wait, just to make sure that I understand, you're saying in quantum mechanics, it's not the individual matter that matters, so to speak, but the relationship
or between the interaction. So in quantum mechanics, nothing exists. The only thing that makes something alive or matter or happen, and I'm saying it my interpretation way, is the interaction. That's what makes it somewhat real, is the interaction. So that's why it's so important now to let that happen and to make that really positive, because that'll lead us, if quantum mechanics has anything to do with anything that's good and real in the world, to whatever this state is that we're supposed to be. We'll get there in a better way if we acknowledge that interaction is what matters versus decision making it. Let that interaction happen, because something beautiful will happen out of it. And this is not soft. It's not soft like, oh, let everyone talk because it makes them feel good. No. It's important to get the people, help the people. If you're a leader, help the people define and work their way into something really productive, creative, innovative. So anyway, quantum mechanics supports it.
Yeah, well, I'm also thinking about, there's a literary theory, right? This idea of the reader completing the text. So sort of the relation between the writing or the piece of art and the reader is like where the art or where the meaning arrives from. It's not the thing itself that's created. It's the interaction between that and the viewer that's constructing, that's finishing the meaning.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So
that's right. Yeah.
Maybe less impressive than quantum mechanics, but similar idea. So,
No. It's so and those of us that are in the Petri dish, helping people with the Petri dish while we're going through the Petri dish all at the same time. It is a study in humanness, humankind, hopefully, as we do it. It's one of the most interesting times for those of us privileged to work and to be in a community that is doing something or anything. I mean, we're very privileged to have that be happening for us and to be the best that we can be while we're getting through it. Huge responsibility, I think. Now, the Aristotle thing, he was my first boyfriend. And
wait, how did you meet? Was it on Tinder?
People or earlier in the workforce, they'll look at me and they'll go, oh, you look good for having So Aristotle cracks me up. So I worked my way through school, and every single major fascinated me. journalism, radio and TV, history, psychology, computer science. The cards with little holes in it made me nervous, so I didn't last long there. Urban studies. I got into nursing, but bodily fluids scared me. Then I went doctor, but cutting scared me. So really searching for everything, found I was interested in everything. And then philosophy I loved. I just loved philosophy. And I think, therefore I am. But I kind of felt contemplating my navel was not going to do much for the world. And then I stumbled upon S.I. Hayakawa at San Francisco State University. He was the president then. He was the one who had been in charge of this department that was classical rhetoric, speech and communication studies, how you understand what's going on. And the whole Aristotle thing is the outline, being able to take any discipline and understanding what it is and how you think about it and how you put it together in linear fashion so other people understand it. It's where the legal profession started. I mean, kind of in Western Civ, everything started thinking-wise there. And I just thought, oh my goodness, I have found the love of my life. Because no matter what subject, this way of looking at it, asking, getting information, being able to put it together in a linear way that other people will understand, it just clicked for me. So he said, go find the good people and help them make their truth persuasive. And that's been the mission of our little company for 30 years. Because that's such a cool thing, helping people make their truth persuasive.
That's incredible. So it sounds like when you talk about this, it was like you found this formula, this answer that you've pulled through all of your professional life and probably your personal life too. But how, for us listening, like how could we apply that approach today to, you know, whether it's like trying to work with a client and understand their content or you know, you said it's rhetoric, like understanding someone else's position. Could you give us an example?
Well, there's three rules he has and he talked to people who wanted to conquer a nation, not just somebody who wanted to win a debate, not a lawyer who just wanted to win a case. He was also talking about conquering a nation. We're not talking about that here. But he said 3 rules, which are really hard to stick to. But if you do, you have a shot at making something happen. The first one is to seek understanding. You have to understand where the other person is coming from and everything about them, why they care, why it's important to them before you can do anything. And we're all narcissistic enough that we're thinking about what I want to say, and what I want to get across, which of course is important, but we don't really have to work on that as much in the beginning. Because the first thing is understand, really know what you're dealing with. In a courtroom, daughter of a lawyer, if you are going to win a case, hopefully you're doing the right thing, and you have to know everything your opponent is going to present to be able to counter it, right? Or to be able to get ahead of it. So that's where this idea started, is that you have to understand who they are and what they care about. So putting that first is a really interesting thing. So that's if you're a leader, if you have a team, if you have customers, no matter who, the first thing is, what are they thinking about? What do they care about? Why is this important to them or not? Right? Because there's that thinking, because it gets your head out of your head. Second point is to, okay.
So before we move to the second one, so seek understanding. How in your work have you done that? Or yes, so if someone, because I think sometimes people make a lot of assumptions that they know their client, that they know their market, that they know what they need to market, they know their employees. How, you know, what are the methods in which we could either challenge people to say, do you really know? Or what are devices or exercises or approaches to really truly find that understanding?
Mm-hmm. So, so what my dad taught me from when I was a little kid, don't open your mouth. Oh, when you open your mouth, you prove you're stupid or not, right? So why not listen first? And what do you learn while you're talking? Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. You learn nothing while you're talking. And it was so interesting because what Aristotle said is exactly that. Like, no matter what meeting you have or how prepared you are or the agreement you had, always get the other person talking first. Always get the other person, because something has happened. And again, that interaction gives you a clue on how to connect with that person or that group of people. So we have this thing called Dialogue Opener that the first company I worked for in New York, Munisbond, Emmett Wolf created it. And he made us all go out. We had to practice different things with senior people on how we could get the other person to talk first and who would make the most money, because we were account executives, because he believed relationships are the most important thing. Business relationships are, sometimes you like your business relationships better than your second cousin twice removed, right? I mean, you're with them because you have trust. So the relationship is there. The only way you know what's going on with the other person is if they talk. Like, we get all prepared and then we go in with, I understand what your problems are and I'm going to show you that I understand your thinking. What does that do for you? I mean, it's okay, but nothing is better than you telling me your problems. So rule, never start a meeting without getting the other person to talk first. So even though I'm prepared with everything you've asked me to come to give you before beginning, out of respect for your time, any priorities or any other thing you want to add or any particular place you want to start. And shut up, because 90% of the time, especially senior people who only have folks after them trying to get something from them, they might be able to say, you know, I only got 15 minutes. Can you cut to the chase and tell me how this is going to help me? Well, cut to the chase and do that for them. So the skill, if there's a skill and a discipline, get the other person to talk first.
That's great. Thank you. So really, we could be applying Aristotle's first principle if we just go into whatever meeting we have and we make sure that we get people talking first. And this goes back to what you were saying about the rule of threes. And we were talking about, you know, hearing where people are right now as we start to transition into, you know, a new normal, I suppose, right? Is just listen, just get them talking. It seems so simple, but it's taken us how many centuries since Aristotle? We're still having to remind ourselves of that, right?
And nobody listens to anybody. Nobody. I mean, really, I mean, we're all so busy, manic minds, and we're doing stuff. And especially in this world, I mean, I can turn the thing off and we can still talk, and I can do my nails or, you know, take care of the kids or do whatever, which is fine. But to really listen to somebody is an active mental discipline, to truly listen to somebody else and to give them the opportunity to give you information that will help you develop a relationship, develop trust, or better give them what they actually need rather than what you want to give them. Relationship is everything, right? And if you do the quantum mechanics thing, I mean, Aristotle didn't call it that, but it's the interaction. And interaction is better if you have understanding of where the other person is coming from. And the only way you do that is by listening to them.
All right, so that's number one, seek understanding. So the second
point he said is make the content clear for them. Okay, so you know how if you're putting together a presentation or a speech, you start writing or you start collecting visuals on how, you know, what visuals should I use in presentation. So the content, you should do an outline clear for them. So what are the major points for them that are interesting with the content? How you put it together, Roman numeral 1, 2, and 3. I have 3 major points. 3 isn't the only number. It's a number that Aristotle liked, the Egyptians like, and data science is saying that people do remember 3 over everything else. So I'm stuck with it. Anyway, so the content should be clear to them, which means it starts with the headline Or like in a textbook, when you were in school, were you ever able to get an A or an A minus in a class by writing an essay on a textbook, not reading the book, but you read the outline? You really read the outline, because the outline, the table of contents is the outline of the book. And if it's a good table of contents, you get the conceptual thinking of what's going on, which is why you can write an essay, not a multiple choice, but you can write an essay on the concepts. So clarity of content is not details up to thesis, it's thesis, and then you can add the details. Because, for example, you get the headline, Trump lost. Do you need to know more? Maybe. Do you want to know more? Maybe. But if you walk out of the room, there is a bullet point or a Roman numeral thesis that sticks in your head, because that's what you want. The clarity of the message for the audience is what you will hear them talking about. And it's usually not the details. It's the thesis of what it is you're getting across. That's hard too, because most people with their own content, I know it's hard for us. We're always scrambling around like how to deliver our message. Much easier to help somebody else with it.
That was my Skype note about some more comments and linked. That's exciting. The boiling it down to make it clear, leading with the headline. In some ways, we're like, yes, of course, right? That's what we want, especially, Aristotle said this, millennia ago, and now we always hear like, oh, our attention spans are getting shorter, our content, consumption is getting shorter. But what have you found? Why is that such a struggle for leaders and organizations to be able to lead with the headline first? What gets in the way, do you think?
I think it's hard because if it's our content, we know the details, and the compulsion of wanting you to understand. It's not out of selfishness. I do want you to understand everything. But the mental discipline is to put it in a form that is easier for you, clearer for you to understand. So the thesis, or Roman numeral 1, at the top of it, and let's take something other than Trump. We have 3 values in our company. We're a value-based company: service, accountability, and curiosity. Funny that we have 3. And we're dedicated to the individual and family, to the team, and to our customers. Service, accountability, and curiosity. So even, I could go on for 3 hours about service, but Roman numeral 1, it is service. I do think it's the highest form of humanity. It's not about being a servant. It's about putting the audience first. It's a competitive different, But when you walk out, I hope that you remember, service is a big deal to them, right? Because how much is going to stick with people? It's like if you run a marathon. Have you run a marathon?
I have run 2 half marathons.
Okay. Okay. All right. So half marathons. Congratulations. That's great. So mile markers. After you've run them for a while, you don't need them. I've run marathons, and after a while, the mile markers. You really don't need it except they're so nice. Because when you run a marathon, that's a long time, and your head can go crazy. And you think you're at 16, and when you look up and you see it's 9, you redo what you're doing to get there. So there's something about the clarity of the thesis that you keep tying back to, which is the key message, because you want people to be able to talk about it. How do you know people have listened to what you have said? It's because you hear them talking about it. But it has to start, most of us are linear thinkers. It starts with the thesis and then goes to the details. Most of us go from details up to the thesis, and we forget about the thesis because we're telling people everything that we think they need to know. Yeah,
well, it's interesting as you're talking about this. Like, I really feel like I've I've built an organization, and it sounds like you have too, knowing what what you do for clients, really around the second principle of Aristotle's framework, which is helping people really make the content clear, because it is a challenge that I think that it's almost a victim of expertise, right? You're inside, the detail, and you almost can't unknow what you know to present it and be able, like you said, to empathize and really understand the audience. And so I think so much of our work, anyway, ImageThink, is really around that, helping people really clarify what that message is, in a way that makes it resonate for other people, because you're almost cursed with your own expertise, your own experience, sometimes, to be able to strip that away. Sometimes you need someone else to come in with their brilliant classical rhetoric and help you do it.
There was a great when I learned that this would be applicable in 1932, it was like one of the first engineers, because we fell into technology, because here in Northern California, it was such a beautiful, beautiful thing. What a router and a hub, because before internet was wireless, it was connected by wires at the intersection of a router and a hub. And I was working with this wonderful engineer who had to present to a mixed audience, external and internal, and how it worked. So we had 72 slides. And again, because the journalistic love of knowledge that Aristotle inspires by seeking understanding, really working this guy as he's explaining how a router and a hub works. But it was detail and detail. He was exhausted. I was exhausted. So I asked him to think of my mother, who, because intelligence is intelligence, if she were to explain to her bridge meeting how a router and a hub worked, what are the categories she would talk about? And he could only have 3. Well, I could only get him down to 5. I couldn't get him to 3. But we were able to take 72 slides and be able to explain from thesis to detail, how a router and a hub work. Well, I walked out of there and I was like doing the happy dance of all time, and so was he, getting up because he thought he was dumbing it down by making it clear. Well, talking to the people who knew, as you know, boom, 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 and they're all going like this. And then, let me explain a little bit about that for those of you that might not be familiar, and then gave detail to the people that had no idea what a router and hub were. But he didn't make the engineers mad that already knew it, because it was so clear. It was beautiful. So then I knew, okay, we're on to something that no matter how complicated it is, you can make it clear if you work at it for the audience. So that's the second thing Aristotle said. So first, understand who they are and what they are. The second thing is make it clear, which is a bloody outline. And then the third one is make it memorable. So if you're writing, don't have 72 words in your sentences. Use bullet points when you want to make your thing. Make it whatever medium you're using to get it across. Make it memorable for them to want to continue to listen, to read, to watch. So if you're the platform, don't be in the dark under the desk talking. Perk it up a little bit so you're interesting to watch. If it's a video, tell people what it's about. Don't make it too long. The thing about writing, there's this guy at Oracle in front of 7,000 salespeople. He said, if you send me an email and I have to open it to find out what you want me to do, I am going to delete it. So I thought that was really extreme. But again, to be memorable even the simple thing like tell people what you want, have it at the top, then explain it at the bottom. That type of thing, how you deliver it, care about that. If you want people to listen, pay attention, and be motivated to action. That's all Aristotle, those 3 things.
There you go. You distill the whole all of your findings in classical rhetoric down to those three things, Maureen. That's really helpful. And clearly you're a genius at communicating those and making them memorable, because I won't forget them. And I know that that other people won't either. But a question that I have, well, making it memorable to me, it's like, yes, of course. But I think people get lost in what that, in the art of that. Like you mentioned a couple of different mediums, like if you're speaking, if you're doing a video, for you and your work at S&P, is there one of these that you feel like leaders struggle with the most out of the three steps? Or you feel like different people are wired differently, and some people have the understanding of one and the mastery of one and struggle with the other? Or do you feel like at a moment in time and where we are, that there's one that we particularly really need to examine?
I think the hardest thing, we teach people not to say good question, but every now and then you do get, that is a really good question. Is there one? And I haven't really thought of it that way, but if I do, the hardest skill, the hardest focus, the hardest discipline is to understand first before. Yes. And I'm not talking about if you're attacked on the street, go for it. But most of us take the time to understand what's going on first before you swoop in. Not a lot of time, just focused time to understand. That's the hardest. I think that's the one that we forget, especially those of us that swoop to action. I mean, as a warrior, I'm going to go, right? Stop just for a second and this again is not life challenging. It's strategic speed. The strategy of strategic speed, strategy is understanding what's going on. That discipline is why work can stay interesting for your whole life, because every day you have to commit, just like doing push-ups to my arms for an old girl. They're pretty good, but every day I do the push-ups. That whole thing about understanding where people are coming from before you get them going is the key.
So it's like a muscle. Well, I was wondering, how much that informs point number 3, make it memorable, because is what's memorable to one audience going to be the same to another? Yeah. Or the format. That's the other thing is how do you factor in the media or the format in making it memorable? Because, it's Aristotle wasn't he like in the plaza lecturing to students? Or I'm confusing him with Socrates. I'm really embarrassing myself.
They all had the same fashion.
Yeah. I was thinking of some like classical paintings but they were using rhetoric, they were using their voice, right? They were orators. Now we have such.
They had tablets too.
They had tablets, right? Well, that was Moses, I thought. I don't know. We're getting confused. But now we have many different media in which we can communicate, and that's constantly sort of evolving. And the rules, I feel like, are constantly evolving about what channel is appropriate for what thing and what's going to hit people in the right way. And how do you approach that? Is there hard and fast rules about what make things memorable across the board, or is it truly, you have to do the work, you have to understand your audience, and then you take that insight and decide what is the right media? I'm thinking of like McClellan, and the medium is the message sort of there. But I have a lot of questions around that, and I'm wondering if our listeners do as well. Is there any hard and fast rule, or how do you unpack that for the leaders that you work with?
So within each media or approach or way of writing or speaking, there are better ways of doing it. So we can talk about that. General rule: if you really want something to get out, you have to appeal to people reading it, hearing it, saying it, and experiencing it, because or watching something where it's more of an experience, because everybody learns in a different way and retains it. And it's funny, tests have been done where the same message goes out in the different ways to approach the learning of the individual. And even if I have seen it 4 ways, there's the one, like I'm an experienced person. I have to actually do it to get it. So I can read it, I can hear it, la, la, la. But as soon as I experience it, sticks. And it doesn't bug me that I've heard it or seen it, because that only gets in a couple of inches into my psyche. So if you really want something to get out, you have to approach the senses of your audience in those 4 ways. They see it, they read it, they hear it, they experience it. Then you know that you got the message across. Now you can't do that every single time because you'll be full time. It's the things that really matter. You know, a change, the values. Now what? I mean, whatever the things that are important, maybe once a month things go out those ways. Then within each of them, there's a way of making things, you want it easy for people to remember. That's the memorable. It's easy for me to remember what you just did. Easy, not simple, but that I can get it so I can do something with it. Because when you think you're asking people to listen, pay attention, and be motivated to action, that's asking a lot. You better be good and memorable and clear and understand.
Right. Listen, pay attention, and then take action and do what I want you to do. Yeah. Why is this so difficult? I don't know. Now, I'm going to just bring it back in our remaining time together, Maureen, to sort of the beginning of the conversation, thinking about, and there's a really interesting question that was posted, thinking about what we were talking about the way we're working now and maybe the way we're all transitioned to working differently, not the same as before, not the same as now, but something entirely new, possibly. How, I wonder, do you think about Aristotle's principles being applied to that? And I guess the question that was asked was, do you think, thinking about communication and helping leaders communicate, you know, seeking that understanding, making it clear, making it memorable, will there be sort of a new skill set or need for a new skill set that emerges for someone to be able to kind of manage bridging the virtual, you know, the engineer in Casablanca and the team working together in the same room? Are those principles going to be the same, or is there going to be something slightly different, you know, or maybe it's just a heightened need for those great Aristotle thinkers more than ever as we're kind of now bridging these different spaces?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, so understand. So let's take understanding. One thing about technology, I believe technology is an extension of humanness. People create these things. Bad people do things with them too, but most people are creating the extension of our humanness with technologies to bring the world, I believe, back to a village. Okay, so I mean, we're one human kind. So in the new world, maybe there's people here. I have Jimmy over there, Joni over there, and then I have Susie and Timmy and Belinda in the virtual room. After this experience, we've learned skills on how to be connected to an audience in this virtual world and in the physical world. So the geography, as we know already, is not going to matter as much, which just maybe in some people's minds brings us closer to a village. So yes, because we now acknowledge that there's a bunch of people no longer just up on the wall. You know how we had it up on the wall and we talked to everybody like this and, oh yeah, they're over there. We now know that these are humans that we're dealing with and working with. So our connection is going to be so much better. I predict, I don't know, but I predict in the new world, as far as including everybody in a communication hamana on the wall or in the seat.
Because we've all been there, is what you're saying. We've all been there. We've all been the people on the screen for the last year plus.
That's right.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. So you think we're just developing a new level of empathy, and Aristotle's first point of understanding. We're going to just have more understanding because we, to your point, experienced as one of those modes, right, of messaging. We've all experienced that now.
You know, one of the stupid skills for the audience to think in this world, I mean, it's really stupid, but you know how a lot of people will do this when they're talking, like they'll look down at you, or they'll look at you like, oh, Jimmy, God, you look so good today. Can you go tell your mom to bring me a pen? So I'm looking at Timmy. And in this world, the audience, you think I'm looking at you right now, but I'm looking at the camera. And this is hard. Because, yeah, it's really hard. And this is where the understanding piece comes in that might be different about this new world, but still goes to understanding. Understand the audience thinks you're connecting with them because eye contact is the intangible, relates the intangible characteristic of credibility, to be able to look at people in the eye. And in this world, when you're looking in the virtual world room, people think you're looking at them if you look at the camera. Now, I still look at you like, oh my God, she's going off, she's crazy. But the understanding the audience. So when you look up at that wall, look right at that camera, because the audience out there, you're looking into their soul. Which is, we'll get used to it, maybe.
Yeah, well, I think we have a long time, to unpack this. And that's what I would say in the early days to people is, I know this is all a frustrating experience for us right now, but we have to remember I go even farther back than Aristotle, right? Like to cave paintings, for instance, but we've all had tens of thousands of years of communicating face to face to work out all of these like social kinks or to develop these things. And really our time working this way has been very short, and so perhaps we'll all evolve to know that when someone's looking down, they're actually connecting with us. But we haven't quite, we haven't advanced to that technology and that way of working yet. So that.
And I'm still working on the clock. So time is still a problem. I haven't figured out how to make all of us on the same time at the same time. So geography is going away. So I can be talking, like I have a 4 a.m. session next week because I'm dealing in California with somebody over in EMEA. I can't quite get the clock to change, but the fact that geography doesn't matter as much anymore is so interesting.
Right.
So,
we like solved for half the Star Trek scenario there.
That's right.
That's space, that's right. But not time. Yeah, that's completely true. Well, Maureen Taylor, thank you so much. I mean, if you look at this image board Claude captured, the conversation, you've taken us on such a journey from quantum mechanics to Aristotle and back and forth. Some real concrete things for people to take away too, like dialogue openers, that first point, remembering to seek the understanding and just shut up and listen, whether it's about how we change our work practices now or understanding your clients or your audiences, right, is seeking that understanding. And certainly it's been very memorable to have you on today. So for everyone joining us, thank you for dialing in. Sam will post this will be up and archived, so you can come back and revisit all of Maureen's points about quantum mechanics. If you didn't quite catch it the first time, it'll be there and available. And join us next month for the next Ask the Expert. Thank you again, Maureen Taylor. And if anyone wants to learn more about what you do at SNP or what you have going on, where will they find you?
Sure, Maureen at snpnet.com.
Great. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much. It was such a pleasure being with you. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I feel like we've collapsed, space and we could be in the same room.
That's right.
In New York together.
Take care. Peace. Bye.